Welcome to Jesus Changes Everything, a daily podcast dedicated to providing a fresh look at the ancient and glorious truth that Jesus not only reigns, but is busy about the business of bringing all things under subjection, that celebrates the wonder and the glory that he has been given all authority in heaven and on earth. It's Tuesday, and that means it's time once again for one of our ism segments. Though, I could either take it or leave it. Our ism for today is an ideology, not a well-defined ideology, more of a practical ideology that goes by the name Indifferentism. Indifferentism, which is Indifferentism. Indifferentism. And indifferentism is defined as that belief that holds that all religions are equally valid. All religions are equally valid. Now, I remember my father years ago talking about how easy it is for people to confuse the First Amendment with reality. That is, the First Amendment, which affirms that the federal government shall not establish a religion here in these United States, is not the same thing as saying all religions are equally valid. Put it another way, the First Amendment is not binding on the God of heaven and earth. It doesn't trump the First Commandment. Well, indifferentism kind of flows out of that mindset that says, well, I don't want to say anybody's faith is false. That's something personal. Here in this country, we have freedom of religion, and therefore all religions are equally valid. Well, that doesn't follow from all of those other premises. But in addition to that, it is also maybe the deeper problem with indifferentism is that it is ultimately self-referentially absurd. That is, if it's true, it's false. If it's false, it's true. It's not true. How do we know that? Well, for the very simple reason that there are essential doctrines in different religions that contradict essential doctrines in other religions. Let's just consider for a moment the three largest religions in the world well, maybe they're not the three largest, the three that I guess that I'm most familiar with. Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Now, in order to take the view that all three of these are equally valid, you'd have to deal with these problems, and you wouldn't be able to. But these are the problems. One, Judaism denies quite explicitly that Jesus of Nazareth was the Messiah. Christianity, front and center and essential to its reality, holds that Jesus of Nazareth is the Messiah. How can both of those be equally valid? If we mean by valid anything in the neighborhood of true, they can't both be true. Because if Christianity is true and Jesus is the Messiah, then Judaism must be false. And if Judaism is true, which holds that Jesus is not the Messiah, then Christianity must be false. Now, you can say neither of them are true, but when you do that, you've denied that they're valid. Now, where does Islam fit in? Well, Islam says that it would be an abomination to affirm of the Most High God that he should have a son. And Christianity has as an essential part of its faith that Jesus is God the Son, and that there's as well God the Holy Spirit. Again, two essential doctrines from two different faiths, which cannot both be true. Either Jesus is the Son of God, or God can have no sons. It can't be both. Or to maybe make it even simpler, Christianity affirms the Trinity not as a secondary doctrine, but an essential, primary, principal doctrine, that without which the Christian faith no longer is. And Judaism and Islam both affirm that their faith is dependent upon not affirming the Trinity. So indifferentism is one of those ideologies, again, that's not something that, I don't think there's an indifferentist society out there putting forth papers and holding conferences and whatnot. It's just a practice. It's an idea that I hear quite regularly. All religions are equally valid. And I, quite frankly, say, when you say all religions are equally valid, I conclude two things. One, you don't know anything about any religion, and two, you don't know very much about logic either. It just can't be. It may sound sophisticated. It might when you plot it for your, open-mindedness, I guess. But really, it's not even that. Because what it's doing is saying, I know more about these religions than those who affirm them know, and where they disagree, where they contradict other religions, in order to allow all religions to be valid, we have to redefine all these religions. It's like saying 2 + 2 = 4, and 2 + 2 does not equal 4 at the same time and in the same relationship. And they're both valid. They can't be because they contradict each other. Well, that's indifferentism. I'm not indifferent towards it. I think it's dumb. And I hope you do too. It is true enough that all truth is God's truth. When we affirm this, we are affirming that we have not left God when we explore any truth, wherever it may be found. To study history or engineering is not somehow less spiritual than studying the Bible or theology. But there's a corollary we tend to miss. No truth is separate from God. That is, while we are not leaving God when studying secular truths, we are leaving truth when we study these truths separately from God. That all truth is God's truth means that nothing in the end can be rightly understood outside of God. There is no body of knowledge out there that God holds loosely, that he loosely holds title to, but that we can understand apart from him. Moses understood this well. As he prepares to say goodbye to the people he ministered to for decades, as he delivers his farewell sermon, he impresses upon the people this simple truth. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children. And you shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. Deuteronomy 6:4-7. Not only is all truth only in context when understood in relationship to the glory of God, but so is all teaching of this truth done in the context of life. We are to talk of these things with our children all day, every day. We do not add, quote, religious instruction to the, quote, secular education they receive during the week. Instead, it must be part of the warp and woof of our lives. For too long, we have taught our children that they could understand the world without Jesus. We have taught them the decidedly diabolical truth that some truths were, quote, neutral. We have taught them by our actions that God is something, or rather someone, we take into account on Sundays and perhaps on Wednesday nights. We have, in short, taught them to be idolaters. One of the great blessings of speaking of these things with our children when they lie down and when they rise up is that it helps us remember these things when we lie down and when we rise up. It's not enough to simply see that the children are taught these things. But as we embrace our calling to teach these things, we better learn these things. We need, friends, to teach our children to seek to see the world as God sees the world, so that we will better see the world as God sees the world. When we teach our children that all truth is God's truth, we are better able to see that all truth is God's truth. An education, friends, that leaves God out of the picture cannot be fixed by drawing him back in later. An education that leaves God out of the picture is not only an abomination to God, but is a lie to our own children.
You've been listening to the Jesus Changes Everything podcast, a production of Dunamis Fellowship, the teaching outreach of Dr. R.C. Sproul Jr. If you've enjoyed this podcast, we encourage you to subscribe, which you can do at all the usual outlets, to tell your friends, and to spread the word. To learn more about the work of Dunamis Fellowship, please visit rcsproulJR.com. And join us next time on Jesus Changes Everything.